And on that note, welcome to the Buffalo Game Space podcast. This week we have Anthony Pismarov, Greg Giles, and Anthony Swinnich. Also,
Cast Crasher, Anthony Swinnich.
Cast Crasher.
What the hell does that mean?
I'm crashing this crash. This I can't say it.
he speaks real nice.
Crasher.
He speaks real purty.
I speak it the good.
So we've been talking today in the game space about a couple of things that just came up recently. One being Project M just announced that they are canceling dev
Immediately.
as of right now. Basically, it's a very popular Smash mod to Brawl, correct?
Yeah.
That
The Wii
aims to
version of
turn
Smash.
Brawl to play more like Melee because of the players.
They're starting Project N, right?
Yeah, they're moving on to N.
Right. Basically, kind of as a big shock to a lot of fans, there's a big Smash community here in town. A lot of players that are devotees of this mod, and kind of came to a shock to a lot of people. They kind of announced the other day, effective immediately, they are no longer working on it. Somebody had heard some rumors. Perhaps you want to recap what you thought you'd heard.
Yeah, there's been some spread going around that Nintendo wasn't going to hit them with a cease and desist, so they stopped making stuff. They were just going to wait till their next content update and just sue them outright, just take them straight to court. It was going to be like something like, initially like $15,000 fee.
So somebody gave them the tip, and they were like, "All right,
Yeah, I think they got tipped off.
enough's enough."
And then they were like, "Yeah, it's not worth it," because they're all like younger kids. Hey, Wayne, I think they're all like teenagers or still college students doing this, and they didn't feel like starting their lives out.
$15,000 per
Yeah,
line
who
of
knows how
code
much,
altered.
right?
And that actually makes sense knowing their age now because, we had said before, it's just, I just don't understand how anybody can sit down, especially with Nintendo, and say they're going to make some variation of a Nintendo thing because it's just, they'll shut shit down that, doesn't even encroach. They'll go way out of their way to stop things they don't want to happen, and let alone things that are obviously stepping on their turf. So the only thing that does make sense is that younger kids were doing this because they just didn't have the foresight. I guess I don't know.
They weren't even that supportive of the competitive smashing to
Right.
begin with. Even not altering the game at all. The actual raw game they put out, they weren't even very supportive.
That
They
was
wouldn't
what I
allow it to
actually-
be streamed.
That was what I actually read, was that now that Nintendo is starting to get big into esports, they're starting to crack down on stuff like Project M, because if they're going to be officially out there supporting it, they don't want something else kind of
Competing
in their
with it, yeah.
in their field.
Yeah. And if I'll take a moment to say, if you want to get a good grip on this issue, it's worth watching a documentary on YouTube that's over 4 hours long. If you just search Smash Brothers documentary, that I think it might just be called that, but
It's
that's
8 1-hour episodes.
Yeah, it's
they're half hours, so it's about 4 hours.
Yeah, but it's incredibly good, and it would, if you're interested in this, you would probably learn a lot, and also it's just a good encapsulation of esports culture in general, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of eye-opening when I saw that. I knew there was a lot of people into the Smash stuff, but watching some of those, introducing some of the players, some of the history that kind of went behind it, I had no idea.
I didn't either, yeah.
The scene existed, and it went as deep kind of as they portray it anyway.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of the tournaments where they talk about these epic, legendary battles that take place, and there's 5 people with folding tables
in
and
a
some
Marriott
gym
lobby
with
with
CRT.
nobody. Yeah.
It's a huge scene, but people, I don't know, I never thought people spoke about Nintendo games like people who play Call of Duty the way they talk about that.
Come on, everybody knows about the Cloud.
Yeah. Wait, the Cloud?
The dude got knocked off the stage, and he used his triple jump, and ended up the Cloud on the Yoshi stage appeared right as he did the triple jump.
Oh, right. No, but I'm saying in general, people don't talk about Nintendo games like they do other games like Madden or
Maybe they
Call of
should.
Duty.
Didn't Splatoon just win best multiplayer game last night?
I didn't watch those actually.
Pretty
I didn't
sure
even know they were
Splatoon
going
somehow
on.
beat Rocket League, which
It was-
is
It-
obscene.
that is crazy.
It was too busy
yeah.
deving out.
Rocket League won 4 other things.
Oh, good. At least
But
they
Splatoon's cool, don't get me wrong, but Rocket League might be my game of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a
I've
different
actually okay. Let's
podcast,
talk about
but-
this. I have been playing Rocket League lately. Actually, that game is awesome.
Yeah.
It is actually. I think that may be the breakthrough esports game because it's there's no Dota and all those games, and even Counter-Strike is relatively simple as that. Relatively simple compared to Dota and stuff. The problem those games have, I think, the most fundamental problem is that there's just a lot of maps, and the difference between real sports and esports is all
There's
real
one map
sports have
always.
one map, and it's
Yeah.
a square, and that's it.
Right.
And like,
What do you
I
mean on
think
that?
that's
Just
huge.
the general intimidation factor of those kind of scenes, like Counter-Strike,
Oh my
Dota.
gosh,
I mean, they're all
yeah.
predicated on like super high levels of skill, and like if you're
Oh,
not this
man.
good, you need
Yeah.
not apply. Like
Yeah.
don't even come into our pool because we're not going to be nice to you. But Rocket League is super accessible.
It's super.
Like I only
yeah.
played the little bit that I played over at your place, and like within
By the end of the match,
within
right?
30 seconds,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I get how I can
Yeah. Yep.
drive around. And after one match was over, it's like, okay, I know how to score and actually
Yeah.
hurt people. And like, I wasn't like useless at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Like within one match, I was able to like play with other people and we could have fun.
The simplicity also breeds a lot of cool tactics. It's just a really well-designed formula.
But I think that's what made Smash so popular among the competitive scene was because you could understand what's going on in the game from anybody watching it, right? You could see who's getting their ass kicked and who wasn't, as opposed to like I don't know, I
Dota
can
or
use
League of
League or
Legends.
Dota, where like I watch the game and I have no idea what the hell's happening. I don't know
Yeah.
if somebody's a good play or a bad play. Like it's really hard to tell like who's winning or losing.
It's
or
about
where
those
the
boots
game's
of
going.
travel. I mean, we know.
Well, yeah,
Boots of
I mean,
travel.
but-
If you don't
right.
have those,
The real
But I
question
know that
here is, are
beforehand.
there boots of travel in?
Right, so that's what I look for. I'm like, which player's got boots of travel? That's obviously
It's-
the better player.
And then I just go home. I go do something else because you obviously
You know who
what's
won
gonna
the
win.
game.
Right.
But that was another thing that Smash brought to the table because it started as a party game. Like a lot of people that wouldn't play Street Fighter or whatever, like all the crazy combinations and like learning how to play these characters,
Yeah.
like
That's another
all
game you
rolling
can't
down the
understand.
toward and like
Yeah.
throwing shoryukens and stuff. Like a lot of like the average player doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
You could drop a GameCube controller in anybody's hands. They can jump around and smash and make something happen and have fun. And that's
Yeah.
what the
Right.
game was built on. Not this whole the competitive stuff kind of came later.
Yeah.
But like that kind of easy accessibility, but then like the impossible to master thing came later as people figured out like there is this mastery level that you could have with this game.
Yeah.
I think just bring it back to Rocket League, the fact that it's kind of like so simple and so accessible is just really a testament to the journey that those guys took making that game.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like the third or fourth iteration of that game they've built. Like they came up with the idea like 5 years ago, and
I
they had
don't
a few
know.
false
Well,
starts.
there was like an original
Like-
version that was not called Rocket League. It was like
yeah.
what was it, like rocket-powered super battle cars? or
Yeah,
It was
something?
like
Yeah.
supersonic rocket-powered battle
Yeah.
cars, or
And I
something
never-
like that.
That
I
must have
never
been their
even
first
heard of it,
lesson. Was
much
that name
less played
sucks.
it.
Yeah.
Right, and everybody comes out as like, oh my god, like overnight success, Rocket League, like this game came out of nowhere and it's so simple. Oh, everybody could have made Rocket
Yeah.
League. No, this is like their fourth attempt at this game. Like
So-
they spent years like tuning this formula.
Also-
False start. They tried to make the game, came out, nobody gave a crap. It didn't quite work. Like they really stuck to it and redefined and honed and sharpened the formula to where it is now.
So
Where-
yeah, and I
That's
remember you
awesome.
saying that before, and I've been playing it, and I've been thinking about you said that, and I'm trying to myself when I'm playing think about what decisions in that game may not have been that just when you do them, it's like yeah, why wouldn't you do it that way? But I'm trying to like tease out the stuff that may have taken many iterations and may not have been obvious that they had to execute in a very specific way. I was wondering what kind of
Can you
stuff
still
is in there
download
that-
the old one?
What?
Can you still download the old one?
I think
I
so.
don't
One of the
know.
big ones that they talked about was just like the general physics, right? Like the
Mm.
physics in the game are obviously not realistic physics. Like it's a
Right.
handcrafted kind of physics situation.
Like if you haven't played
better
the
that
game,
way.
you can drive up on walls, even on the ceiling. I think the cars jump.
You can jump and like you know
yeah.
how high the cars jump, how fast do they drive, how fast do they accelerate, how long do you stay in the air, what can you do while in the air?
Yeah.
Can you do like somersaults and that kind of stuff?
For reference, the name of the game was Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket-Powered Battle Cars.
Yeah, because you know that's got like
That's real
staying
cute.
power. It's way better than Rocket League.
I think I see where they're coming from on that, which is it is a funny name, but for
It's too much.
It's too yeah.
because
like
I can't even recite back
It's
what
way
you
too
just
much.
said to me.
the
But
problem
then-
is a running
I
business.
think
so.
even in the title, it kind of tells you what the story of the game.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
'cause it started as kind of like this crazy thing that's
Yeah.
like more complicated than you think it was, and they honed
Yeah.
it down. Like they
Yeah.
kind of they folded the samurai sword, so to speak, and they just kind of pounded it until like it just does this
Samurai.
one thing, and it does
Breeze.
really well, and it feels good.
And yeah, and it's just like I feel like that attention. It has a really great attention to detail. Like one of my favorite things about it, and I think this is the kind of design that permeates the entire game that just makes it great, is I can get into a match within 2 minutes with not even looking at the screen. Like I just start the game, and I hit A. I'm not even reading what's on the menu, and I get into a game and I'm playing it like immediately with other people.
That's the best.
And that's how, there's no, like, they just know that like, that game is designed to be bite-sized in that way and jump in, jump out, and it's perfect. It's like, I just wish more games took, that approach where it's like, obviously I'm here to do one or two things in this game. Please design it to be as frictionless as possible for me to get to those points, and it's
I'm sure
usually
one of the
not.
things they iterated on a ton was also like game length, game speed.
Yeah.
How long does the matches last?
The matches
They're
are
only,
about
what,
5
like
minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah,
5 minutes.
and that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. I think by the end of 5 minutes, you're kind of feeling like, all right, this team, I've had enough of it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like down like 3 goals or whatever, and it's just
Yeah.
like, all right, this needs to be over.
We played somebody the other day, and we played them, the same 2 people. We were like passing the controllers around, so we had 2v2. And we played the same 2 guys for probably 45 minutes, back and forth. And my friends,
great.
I wasn't up there for the first half of it, and they were like, we can't score on these guys, what the hell? And it's because they were keeping a goaltender just in the net. He was just staying in the net. So I was like, give me the controller. So I spent the first match I played just ramming him. Just back
Trying to
and
break
forth.
his spirit.
He'd go back in, and I would just sit in the net and just run into him over and over. I spent the entire match doing it.
That's great.
And eventually, I'd say about a minute left in the match, he like lost it and just drove out.
And finally left.
And
the
we
goal.
played them for a lot longer, but eventually they left because we figured out their ploy.
Yeah.
How many players is that game?
I've seen 3v3.
I've only ever played 3v3.
I don't know if there's 4v4.
There's more. You can do up
Well,
to.
you can play 4v4 against the computer, right?
Yeah, which means you probably can play it online.
Yeah.
There's also you can do way more because there's like a crazy mode where I think it's like 5 or 6 teams of 5 or 6, and it's like in the description it's like this is going to be nonsense. Like they're just that's the
Those-
mode is to be nonsense.
Those
Like,
simple
yes.
multiplayer games are often the most fun.
Oh yeah.
And I think Nintendo screws up because they have a lot of that, but they just never take it to the next level.
I
Like,
mean-
have you ever played Nintendo Land?
No.
I don't know if those could be competitive,
I
but
just like
those
Nintendo
No,
Land
they're,
a lot.
they're awesome.
those multiplayer games are fucking incredible. Animal Crossing Candyland, it's insane.
I just
It's
like
insanely fun.
Nintendo Land.
Wayne, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
Nintendo Land could have been fun, but they, like you said, they didn't go that extra mile.
Yeah.
It was too safe as far as I was.
And we're back after a brief interruption for a few of the guys have just left the studio to go to Toronto for the Canadian Video Game Awards and Bit Bazaar, which they're taking part in this weekend. So now it's down to myself and Greg. So we're just kind of got to pick it back up, kind of where we were talking before about Rocket League and how such a simple game came from actually an astounding amount of work and time and money on the part of the developer that a lot of people don't seem to recognize. It's the classic case of I use like Louis C.K. as the perfect example because he some years ago was kind of like, hey, where did this guy come from? He's an overnight success, like overnight huge star. Like,
That really did happen.
No, he
Yeah.
was like been doing this stuff for like 20 years.
Since he was in his 20s, yeah.
I think
That's the
started-
crazy
He
thing.
didn't go to college. Like he was started when he was like way too
Really?
young. He was like 17 or 18.
I knew he
when
started young,
comedy.
yeah.
He was a writer on the Conan O'Brien show.
Yeah.
He did like all these writing gigs. He was just living around other comedians and like just living the life and touring and doing that stuff for years and years and years. And then he hits and people are like, overnight success.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, if
actually,
you
this is
ignore the first
another-
15 years of work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so kind of like Rocket League, such a simple game. They
Right.
just made it. Well,
Yeah.
actually, if you ignore, the team coming up with this idea, thinking it was great, putting it out to basically silence, and then instead of giving up on the idea, like figuring out what went wrong,
Yeah.
honing the concept,
Yeah.
like sharpening it, testing it, polishing it like a million times over, and then they finally put this stuff out, and the people are like, "Oh, this is such a simple game, came out of nowhere." Well, yeah, sure. If you ignore 5 years of struggle between, I don't know how long it took them, but it was definitely their full dev squad.
Yeah, it was closer to 5 years than 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, and all that. That just speaks to like how nuanced design can be. I think a lot of what clicks for us as people isn't something we cognitively maybe even recognize, but we can feel it, and that's like an important part of whatever design you're doing. Is like those jumps aren't just about gameplay timing, right? Like there's a whole arc to that jump in momentum and time. I'm sure that is all tightly correlated and they're probably, I'm sure, I wonder how much time they've spent on just like jumps or something like that. Probably like hundreds.
Right. We were talking about this last night at Project Night because several of the people who made their first game at BGS Jam 5.
Real quick to clarify, by jumps I mean like making the car jump. There's no, as far as I know, there's no like jumps you can do for points or like off a ramp or anything.
Yeah,
so.
you just press a button and you jump, you launch into the air.
Yeah.
But we were talking about that specific thing, not as related to Rocket League, but related to platformers. So this group, first game they've ever made, really awesome. They got a solid team that's really enthusiastic about kind of continuing work on this Jam game they just made 2 weeks ago.
Which is, that's great. Good. That usually doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, a lot of times jams are just like to test an idea and then you kind of move on.
Yeah.
But these guys, it's their first game, so they want to actually like put something out and like, all right, they're not going to work on it for years, but they want to put something out that they're a little bit more proud of than just the jam. They also have a ton of content that didn't make it in. So they already have this content, they just need to tie it into the game. So what they were talking about was it's a platformer, and so of course there's a jumping mechanic and like a running mechanic. Pretty straightforward, done a million times, but there's a million variations of it. And so what they were actually trying to do, they couldn't decide if they wanted the game to be fast with like tight jumping because that would make the game more of kind of like an arcadey action game, or if they want it to be a little bit slower with a little bit floatier of a jump where the character could jump higher, spend more time in the air, which would make it more of kind of like a platformer puzzler. Kind of like slows it down. Or
I would guess they went with the second one.
They kind of did, because that's what the original version that they made for the Jam was kind of like that.
A little floatier.
Because it was also, they wrote the jump mechanic themselves. They were kind of using like the built-in gravity and whatnot, so they hadn't really done it before. I pointed them towards a few other implementations that are like, CC0 online that other people have done, just so they could wrap their head around other ways to do it.
Yeah.
And so they played around with some of those, and they ultimately went back to the one that they made and trying to alter it. But it led to this kind of conversation of like, for such a simple genre like a platformer, like the tightness and speed and height of the jump really lends itself to different types of games and then a different type of perception of quality. And this is actually a topic that, as simple as it is, it's been written about quite a bit. There was even an article a while back that actually graphed the variation of a platforming game's jump to that of Mario and the sales of that game. And what they basically saw was the more a platforming game's jump varied from the feel of a Mario jump from Super Mario, the less the game sold.
I think that's super interesting because I really feel like Nintendo out of the gate like kind of nailed game design in a way that the industry still isn't getting. And so to hear that, it's just verifies nothing in that game was an accident actually.
It's super tight, and if you actually go back and look under the hood of like how Mario's actual jump mechanic works in the first Super Mario Brothers, the very first 8-bit, launched with the NES title, the under the hood, it's way more complicated than you think it is. There's a lot going on under the hood to keep it as tight as it is, to keep that kind of tiny bit of momentum that he has. Depending on if you're running, you get a little bit more height. Like it kind of like how you move in the air versus on the ground. It's when you actually start breaking it down, it's like there's a lot going on under the hood that you would initially just be like, you apply an upward force and he goes flying through the air. Yeah, not so much. You do that and people are like, this doesn't feel right. It's not tight. It's not responsive.
Right, and there's also like it's like a gut feeling, but you're also trying to warp it, right? Like because if you go strictly by how it should feel, it may not necessarily be fun. And so sometimes you're trying to bend that, but you got to keep it believable.
Kind of like tiny, tight little details. Like if you jump, you fall at a certain speed from that jump. But if you walk off a platform, you actually fall faster.
Really?
Than if you just hit Mario. Like if you actually like walk off the edge of a platform without hitting it, without jumping, you'll fall to the ground faster.
And that's by design, not by like
pretty much by design. Like they want that's part of the game. And it's kind of because it feels a certain way when you go off the edge of a thing, you kind of just rip down and you kind of fall off.
Never noticed that.
It's kind of like that pulls people into like the pit kind of thing, and like, there's a lot going on there.
Now that you mention it, though, I totally see it. Like I'm thinking of a feeling a jump in my memory of like Mario, and it is very arced, right? And so I do sort of feel like the descent is longer and slower. And then I do know that when you walk off, you fucking fall the fuck off on a Mario game. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I mean, they did a lot there that, like, you don't immediately recognize until you actually try to recreate it, and then you're like, oh, well, this isn't quite right. Well, what's the difference? Well, I mean, like, that last 5% is, like, everything, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you can get close, but, like, you know,
Yeah.
so that's why that article was kind of very interesting, because they were kind of saying, you know, they had kind of perfected the jump in Mario, where they kind of had done it like a million times, like the going up speed, the amount of time he spends in the air, the different, like how high he can actually jump versus like how big he is on the screen, which hasn't been constant throughout the years. Like they've tweaked that formula a little bit here.
Yeah,
and there.
Nintendo is good at, but they're always doing that. They're always like rethinking their own staples, I think. Even if they're not deviating far, I feel like they're always trying to improve it in a noticeable, meaningful way.
I mean, like Super Mario World for Super Nintendo is still like one of the greatest games like ever made. Like,
Dude, that
there's
game,
just like
yeah.
there's so much stuff in that game that is just so.
They got
The level of polish and tightness in that game still blows me away.
Yeah,
like,
they
20
got
years later.
For what is in that game, what they did with it, like they pushed their own mechanics to the absolute limits. I feel like they went so far beyond, like, I don't know. They just there's parts of that game where like I feel like you gotta have control, like pixel perfect control to get through, and it's designed like that.
I mean,
because
that's
they
what
just
you also can see with Mario Maker now, where people are making these insanely difficult levels for this game,
Yeah.
using the same kind of physics and mechanics that came into the original game.
Yeah.
Where, like, when I first played the game, and I was like, oh, you could hit A to do, like, a spin jump, but you don't jump as high, like, well, okay, that's interesting, but I'm never going to use that. Like, on the first few levels, you're like, that's,
Right,
dumb. That's
yeah.
dumb. And then, like, fast forward, like, however many hours into the game, you're, like, spin jumping on, like, little piranha plants to, like, keep alive, and, like, it kind of adds, like, all these different little layers that aren't immediately recognizable, but once you've kind of learned everything throughout the game, and you, like, the hardest levels can be so much harder because they gave you kind of the tools to deal with them, and then they build them around them, like, you know, the cape and being able to fly. And, like,
Yeah.
all the
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And just even how the parabola of his flight even works, like how like when you like nose down, how he kind of like dives down and
Oh, it
pop
feels-
back up,
oh.
and the little sound of the boing.
Yeah, and that's a good. Yeah, that's a whole other part. That, like, you know, sounds can add a lot to feel in a way. You know, if you get the right sound time just right, an action can feel almost different. You know.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, I don't think we're breaking any new ground there. I mean,
No,
for
yeah,
sure.
I mean,
the
I
audio
think-
design. I feel like I agree with kind of what I think your sentiment is, that they kind of get short shrift sometimes.
Yeah.
Where people will overlook it, they just expect it to be there.
Yeah.
Whereas like the amount of actual effort and time it goes into like getting the right sound effects and making them feel right for the action to kind of make that correlation.
Yeah, I've never had to do that, so I guess it's more interesting to me and more novel, I guess.
I was actually just doing that yesterday. I was actually going through an old sound bank that I have of you know, I got gigs of sound effects that are pretty high quality things, but there's just a giant mass of them on my computer, and I was kind of going through them looking for some things that I could use for this project that I'm working on right now to make it feel right. And it was like I'm trying to make like a sound effect for like a black hole, right? Which in reality, there's
Doesn't
no
sound like
sound.
anything.
You know, it doesn't sound like anything. But that doesn't mean shit. When you're making a space game, people still expect sounds. Like people are like, "There's no sound in space." Fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make the space game could be completely silent.
Yeah.
People will hate it.
Mhm.
Like, sorry. Like, yeah, it's not realistic, but
Actually, I
it doesn't
think
feel
if you
better.
did that right, it could be incredible, but
In bits and pieces, if you did
that
stuff,
would have to be the point almost.
There's only a few games that have even attempted to do that, and they always compromise and do some stuff where like the sounds are being simulated in your headset, or like these are the sounds inside the cockpit, not the outside the ship or whatever.
Sounds inside the cockpit.
There's always some kind of
fuck.
There's always some kind of compromise to make it not totally silent, because as cool as it is, it's not cool in the long term. It's
Yeah,
cool
it
for
just
like
gets
a few
boring.
seconds, and then your brain's like, all right, where's the audio?
Even I think I would get bored by that.
Yeah.
And I'm usually one that'll stick it out for art's sake.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so just to add to my earlier point, though, I think Nintendo just like got also another thing they got right off the bat, on top of this just nuance and micromanagement of space and feel and movement, was the idea that games are an experience and you don't need dialogue or any of that shit, really. I mean, in my opinion, the best games use none of that, or almost none. And I believe that a good game, in my book, by definition, is one that is almost purely experiential, and they did it before, like one of the first games ever made.
Well, I mean,
and they got it
to a certain
pretty
extent,
down.
pretty much all the original, like, what I would call the retro arcade classics are devoid of any type of story or even like explanation of any logic that ties to the real world in any way. I mean, explain the story of Pac-Man. I mean, like these things don't exist.
Yeah.
But they built like that experience, that kind of like the hunter the hunted becomes the hunter kind of thing.
But see, like Pac-Man's like an isolated, almost like puzzle kind of thing, whereas Mario and Zelda are long adventures. And
I think that was the advent of console, where Nintendo killed it out the game. I mean, really, Nintendo wrote the book, kind of. I mean, yeah, the Atari was out there before them and whatnot, but Atari was really kind of
that was
they were really recreating arcade experiences in the home. I mean, that really was the thing. There was the arcade games, like the retro coin ops that you can think of, like Donkey Kong and Pong and like those kind of games, and the original kind of Atari, like, generation really just aspired to bringing the arcade home so you could play it on your home TV and not have to pump quarters into it.
Yeah.
But the 8-bit NES really kind of blew the doors off of, like, yeah, this isn't the arcade. We're not going to try to be the arcade. Yeah, sure, there's arcadey games, but we have a totally different format here to play with. We don't have to kick people off the machine 3 minutes later because we would need another quarter out of them to keep our business running.
Yeah.
Like, we actually want to keep people on the machine. What the exact opposite. We actually want to keep people playing.
Yeah.
We want people to get as much enjoyment and time out of this content as possible. And even with that kind of, mission, a lot of the early games are still really short, but that was just by virtue of the hardware.
Yeah.
Like, it was just limited by there's only so much content you could put on a cart back then.
And also, I think on top of it, coming from arcades with stuff like Atari, there was also, people looked at consoles and games as toys then. So they were often marketed as toys and considered themselves to be toys. And I think the Atari was mostly a toy because there's no depth to it. It's just, ooh, look at this, and I mean, there's not really any games you could. I mean, there's some context of time, but like I've never played an Atari game, and I've tried that. I'm like, I want to see more of what's going on in this game. Every time she's like, I can't do this, like very quickly, and so yeah, like to your point, and then I think NES was maybe the first time where you were. Yeah, it was a threshold, right? Like it was a big, clear divide in how games, especially console games, were being done, and how to something versus something more like we have today.
Yeah, I mean, the PC has always had those kind of like more sprawling things.
Like almost to a fault.
Really, it was kind of
not almost, but definitely
to a fault, especially the early eras of like Zork and like Ultimas and whatnot. I mean, like it was like super
those games
obscure
can be so
tomes
obtuse.
Of like just you have no idea unless you talk to somebody who had already done it. This eventually has to get back to somebody. You have to start talking to people until like 6 degrees of separation gets you back to the dev team.
Yeah.
And they tell you how they made the game.
Yeah.
This is the only way to finish half those things.
Right. Yeah. That wouldn't even be an interesting Let's Play. Because you just have to read it anyway, so fucking just play it.
I know, right? I mean, that would kind of be interesting to see some of these Let's Players now, like give them Zork with no explanation. Just play this.
Dude,
see if they make it more than 10 minutes.
You know what's hilarious? I played, it might have been Zork. What's the one where you start out in a field by like a mailbox and there's a house?
I think that's Zork.
I think it's Zork.
Yeah.
And maybe the first puzzle or one of the first three, I think about it all the time because I was walking around and I got stuck, which is the Zork experience. I think is just being stuck, and it was driving me crazy because it was just like, what else could I possibly try? Like, and I went and looked it up, and it was funny. It was the key, or I think it was a key, was above me. It was look up. And I hadn't even considered a layer above my own, right? And that's a classic game design problem. And I think it's even more bad in a text thing because it's so divorced from actual space that I was like mad at the solution, really.
Well, I mean, like actually, I was just kind of noticing that in since people had started playing D&D here at the space. I was kind of noticing that in some of the play. Like you were telling me how like your guys' campaign, you guys have tendency to be like, okay, we go over there, and you guys start heading in that direction. Whereas my campaign is quite the opposite. Like, we've got a lot of very deliberative characters in my group, and we can't take 3 steps without kind of talking about, like, okay, what's above us? What's around us?
Yeah.
I rolled a fucking check around the corner. Like, it's like, and I was kind of like sitting there, it's like, I haven't played this before. Do we really need to be, like, doing all this? And, like, kind of thing. But, you know, the DM's going with it and being like, okay, like, above you, there's, like, clouds and, like, a couple of birds, but you don't see anything else. Or, like, I rolled a check to see if I know what kind of dragon that is or whatever. It's like, oh, well, you rolled a 1, so you epically fail knowing anything because you're dumb. But it's like all this stuff kind of like takes time. It's very deliberative. It reminds me very much of like the old text-based adventures.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually, pretty shortly after we interrupted ourselves, I was saying, yeah, and I think and even as a designer, knowing like looking up is a thing players don't do. I still don't do it. I just don't really, unless I'm looking up to see if they put anything up there because nobody looks up. But yeah, right after in that campaign, like pretty soon we came into a situation where we were actually getting attacked from above, and I love that about D&D. It can be so spatially organized for something so free.
It is kind of funny because like one of the big things of like especially early console FPSs like GoldenEye, for example, one of the big, or like Doom or like any of those things, like one of the big kind of design constraints was verticality.
Yeah.
So they actually went way out of their way to make it so that the player really almost never had to like look up or down. Like there was rare occasions where you wanted the character, and like a game like GoldenEye was a little like slightly more advanced than like the old Doom stuff because you could actually look up if you held down like the C buttons and like you lean back and like look up.
In Doom?
No, in GoldenEye.
Oh, in GoldenEye.
But they really went out of their way to make that happen as few times as possible and only use it like when they really wanted to like show you something bigger than that could just be seen directly.
Almost like a cinematic moment rather
than
kind
of like getting you to do that because there's like that was like one of the big design just make everything kind of be on the same level horizontally as the player, so really all they have to do is look left and right. I think Half-Life did a lot to kind of destroy that.
How do you figure?
Well, especially I mean just playing on PC games, like, you know, Doom was a PC game, but they still kind of did that same thing. Keep everything kind of on the same level as the player. Don't make them look up and down or anything.
Yeah, no, Doom went so far as to, like, they would have enemies on different heights, but you would just shoot forward and it would hit them, even though they were actually 20 feet above you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did the aiming up and down for you.
Yeah.
Because it couldn't handle doing the rest of the stuff, and they didn't want to change the angle the player looked at because everything was billboard in that game anyway.
That game wasn't true 3D. It was like, Doom 1 was...
a lot of trickery.
Yeah.
But, you know, Half-Life came out, and they, you know, you're playing with a mouse and a keyboard. Even, like, I played Doom with a joystick. It sounds archaic and insane. I actually played it with a joystick because it was literally all you did in the game was you pulled the trigger to shoot and you moved left and right or moved forward and back. Like, what was it? Why would I use my keyboard? That's
in Doom
stupid.
1?
Doom 1.
You could turn.
That's what I'm saying. You turn.
Oh,
if you wanted to
strafe.
No, you could strafe too, but that was the second button on my joystick. I had a 2-button joystick. The one on the top, if you held that down and I moved left or right, that was strafing. That's how I strafed. So you couldn't strafe and turn at the same time. You could only strafe or turn.
Yeah.
Like now that's like blasphemy. Like half these games, it's like circle strafing.
It's all
like,
about
it's
everything.
Like the mechanic.
It is. Not even first-person shooters. Most games really do revolve around you strafing. I mean, that's.
Yeah, kind of circle strafing nonsense.
Right.
Which is something that I never really liked. And even though like GoldenEye is like heavily predicated on circle strafing, I love that game, but it's like those things drove me crazy about it.
Yeah.
Playing that with just like a 2-button joystick, and then when Half-Life came out, it was mouse and keyboard, like straight up. Like there was one was looking around, the other was keyboard. Lots of games had done this before Half-Life. It wasn't like
like Quake 2 was probably.
It wasn't like they came up with that mechanic, but they were the first ones that I really took notice of, that they made you look up and down and around you in a much more fluid way. Like they made you kind of try to be aware of your surroundings as much as possible. They had Marines coming in through the ceiling. Like people would they would break out the skylight and like rappel in through the ceiling. There's a full level on that game where you're on the edge of a cliff, like you're working your way up the side of this kind of crazy Grand Canyon-y
The
kind of
helicopter.
looking cliff, and there's attack helicopters and Marines like rappelling down the side of it, and everything is up and down. There's actually almost nothing on your level.
Yeah, that one
And,
is that one was tough.
And then they
for that
that
reason, actually.
Yeah, they introduced like the laser guided rocket on that same
Yeah.
level, which was like one of the coolest things at the time.
That was good.
Which is still a cool weapon even today. But making you kind of be more aware of kind of what is going on around you. But even still, even with all that today, like if you're making like a first person shooter and everything's like up and down, people are going to complain. Like it's not even so much that they're not able to look up and down and around. It's kind of just like it's exhausting at a certain point where like keeping as much on the same level as the player as possible like just allows people to interact with the content like a lot easier. So even if you're playing like Fallout or Skyrim or anything that has like all this crazy stuff and verticality and all the other stuff, it's very sparingly used. And when it is used, it's like for a specific reason. Like you're going up a tower or you're doing like a specific thing.
Right.
But most of it will still take place on the plane of the player.
Yeah.
So really all you have to do is really look left and right. You don't have to look at your feet or up into the sky for the most part.
Yeah. Gosh, how do we get there? Mario?
Very circuitous route through Mario, back through Retro Arcade, and then
I think
back
we're still
into-
talking about Rocket League, technically.
So back to Rocket League. You can fly around on cars.
Well, so, all right, this is a good breaking point. So now, I think the last podcast we did, you had played Fallout, and I hadn't. And now I have.
Now you have.
And
So interestingly enough, what are you thinking?
I want to like it more than I do, and that's not to say I don't like it. I see all the stuff I want is there, but I also feel exhausted by it. Up right out of the gate, just knowing just the interesting stuff in that game happens deep, and that's kind of what makes it special, I think, sometimes and a lot of the time.
I generally disagree with that. I agree with the fact that it starts slow, and also starts slow in a semi-dead area, which is kind of like odd.
See,
I don't know. Maybe it's because they got flack for the Skyrim opening, but
that is like one of the worst openings of all time for one of the best-selling games of all time. Yeah.
The first time I went through the Skyrim opening, I thought it was super cool and fun. The second time I created a character, I was like, why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
Like, this is nonsense. Once you've done it once, it should be one of those things where it's like, you can skip it. Once you've done it, you should be able to skip it.
Yeah.
Because you don't get anything really important or special out of it, like other than like the story setup.
Other than bringing you into the story.
Right. So like the first time you fire up the game, you should go through it, but it should be a skippable.
And it's cool the first time.
It should be like a skippable, playable cutscene. Like it should be a cutscene that you could play if you want, but you could skip it.
Right. Anyways.
They kind of like you come out of Vault 111.
I feel like that's because of the town building stuff. I don't specifically remember it being extra desolate, but my guess would be that's why.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty. No, it's more just kind of like there's just like nothing. You're by your old town. You're in Sanctuary, and it's not that big of a place. But it was more just like there's not a lot of like really interesting stuff around it. Like I actually found myself probably for the first few hours of the game, there wasn't much going on, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Kind of like lets you dip your toe in and ease yourself. It doesn't drop you into the deep end like right away until you kind of start looking for missions and kind of stuff. But like I totally just ventured off to the east. I just like kind of wandered and like found like a listening post, found like a suit of freaking power armor, like finding these things are cool, but like there's no story to speak of. There's no characters that I care about or anything like that.
Yeah, it's probably honestly I gotta think that's just so you can get for like less familiar players to sort of get their.
But then it also
catch
like
their
brings you
bearings and
like if you go to the first mission it gives you like to go down to like Lexington and Concord or whatever to go with the Minutemen.
Yeah.
Like if that's like the very first mission or whatever, and it introduces you to like your very first companion who wasn't the dog.
Yeah.
And I used Preston for like a minute. Like I used him for a little bit.
Wait, Preston?
He's the Minuteman you meet at Concord.
The head guy? With the sniper rifle?
With the laser rifle, yeah.
He can be your companion?
Absolutely. It says he's like the first right off the gate. He's now available once you kill the stuff in the street.
Because
once you kill the stuff in the street, you can be they all go to Sanctuary.
And then you can do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, that makes sense because I told him So my style of playing this time around is I'm going to be super loner. So I've just told everybody so far I don't want to be involved in their stuff. So yeah, I didn't see that he was offered as a companion because I just left.
The little pop up like show like will actually tell you like the game actually. It's not even like it's like
Okay, then I'm just stupid.
like a little pop up on like the left hand like top left hand kind of corner of the screen. It'll be like so and so Deacon is now available as a companion. You know, and like the companions are very kind of open in the sense that you could tell people to go screw and then come back to them like 10 hours later and be like, hey, you want to roll? And they'll be like, sure. Like you could
Go screw themselves, you mean. Not, you said tell people to go screw.
Yeah, well, that's how I say go screw. So I think it's a better way to say, hey, go screw. So, yeah. But he's like the first companion that wasn't the dog that...
Okay.
And this, I mentioned this in the last one, that I was very disappointed that I couldn't have my dog and the companion.
Yeah.
Which in previous Fallouts, Fallout 3 in New Vegas, you could have your dog and a companion. So I had my little freaking roving band of, you know, me and my
Entourage.
my companion and my dog.
Named your dog Turtle.
My little family, you know, rolling, which I really liked. And now this time, like, I go to, it's like, oh, Preston's available as a companion. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll see what's up with this guy. And then it's like, all right, where are you going to send your dog? I'm like, damn it. I don't want to send him anywhere. I want to keep my dog. And so I'm rolling with, I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this guy a shot. The dog doesn't say anything. I'm going to see, I'm going to see what's up with this guy. And, you know, this is like the first companion the game kind of like really throws right in your face. It's like, here's a companion. Like, boom.
With were you saying with dog meat?
No, with Preston.
Oh, okay.
Dog meat, yeah, even quicker.
Yeah.
It's like, boom, here's your dog.
And it is very...
And then Preston's like, boom, like, all right, here's a companion if you want him. All right, I'm going to roll with him. And he just was just the most boring companion.
Yeah.
Like, he's just such a goody two-shoes, like, kind of like wannabe cop.
Lawful good kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's not
but
interesting.
like totally just like everything's about the Minutemen, and the Minutemen is like, okay, I get the concept, but it's like it's not that big. Like, all right, enough about you and the Minutemen.
We get it.
Yeah,
You're
we
in
get
the
it.
Minutemen.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh no, I'm in charge of the Minutemen. Like, dude, I just showed up here. You're putting me in charge of you. You are weak motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, really? Like he's like, yeah, you're the general now. I'm like, and my guy's even like, general of who? He's like, I don't know, I guess general of me, I guess. And like, it's like, this is really, you lame piece of crap.
These people have no chance. Yeah.
It's like, you lame bastard. And so I was like, that's kind of really kind of silly in the sense that it's like, okay, they give you kind of the most milquetoast like companion like out the gate, and it's like, as a design decision, it's like, all right, for casuals or whatever it is, I guess, but it's kind of like, even then, it's like, you want them. If I'm giving up my dog, the companion better be interesting. You know what I'm saying? Because the dog rules. But if I'm giving up the dog, like, he better be interesting. And so, spoilers or whatever, I went down to, I was like, I roamed around a bit, and I was like, I'm not really doing anything. You know what? I never engage with the main story until it's too late. Like, I should just go do some main story stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they'll probably point me in the right direction of kind of like expanding the map and characters I can interact with.
Yeah, because that game, if you go the wrong direction, you can just get your shit ruined by a Deathclaw or something.
You could, and you can also end up in the middle of nowhere with like nothing cool happening.
Right.
You can always find stuff to scavenge. You can always find like crap and weapons and armor and junk and aid and all
that's only fun when you're focused on doing something else. You're doing that sort of as you go. Not that is not fun to do in and of itself.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes I'll see a building that's just like, oh, I can go in here. Well, I'm just going to clear this building.
Yeah, like a robotics factory.
I'm just going to clear it,
stocking up.
Exactly. It's like, I don't even care what's going on in here. I'm going to kill.
Yeah, I don't care about the story.
I'm going to kill anything that's in this building, and I'm going to carry everything out that I can carry until I'm over encumbered. And then I'm going to chug whiskey so I can carry more. And then I'm going to fast travel back to Sanctuary, dump it all off, and then I'm going to continue on my mission.
Thanks for saving us. You're like, yeah, whatever, like hammered on whiskey. Just like, I don't care. I didn't even know you were here.
Yeah, so anyway, I went down to Diamond City, which I really appreciate what they did.
And I'm like, that's about probably the next thing I'll do.
So I guess what I'm going to say is, like, the second I got to Diamond City, I was like, yeah, like, smart move. Don't wait till you're 20 hours into the game to go to Diamond City. Just go to freaking Diamond City already. Okay. Because it expands the entire game, like, in multiple ways. Like,
does Diamond City become, I would assume, a hub of sorts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like almost right in the middle of the map. It's also the biggest settlement in the
That's
game,
smart.
according to what they say. It's got the biggest market. It's like there's a whole full marketplace, like a big circular market right in the middle where like they sell armor, guns, junk, everything. There's some cool companions that are available there. There's a couple that you meet right out the gate that are way more interesting than Preston Garvey. Like they actually have like potential motivations and personalities as opposed to just like I want to be a policeman in the wasteland. Like
Just incompetent and dull.
yeah, you know, and like actually meeting some like other interesting
With that cowboy
characters.
hat too, that doesn't help.
I rock a cowboy hat every once in a while. Got to.
In real life?
Oh yeah, all the time. When I go to the bar, I rock a cowboy hat. No, it's Fallout, obviously.
Okay. In Fallout, of course. In Fallout, I have like, yeah, I have fun with what I wear in Fallout, unlike real life, which is just plain colors.
But yeah, there's some interesting characters there, and there's some cool stuff that you can do out of that, and it also introduces some of like some of the more interesting concepts that the game tries to tackle that I did not even know was like even a thing until I started like engaging with some of the quests. And once you do engage with it even the slightest bit, you start seeing it everywhere, and all the stuff with the Institute and like the synths.
Is it stuff like collect stuff?
No, it's kind of like an underarching kind of theme kind of this game that like I didn't even know was really happening, because before it's like, oh, I'm just wandering the wasteland. This is like Fallout 4. It's kind of like Fallout 3. I'm gonna walk around and shoot stuff in the face and take all their shit.
Yeah.
Like no, like but like the games all have kind of stories, like, you know.
There
DC has its kind of theme. New Vegas kind of has its theme about kind of like, you know, the past and how it influences the future and like how much you should freaking hold on to it. Like this one's theme is much more like, you know, spoilers or whatever, but it's not going to matter. You're going to see it, but it's very kind of straight. It's like, I didn't even know this was kind of a thing that happened in this universe, but there's kind of like a full-on like Blade Runner thing kind of going on, where there's these things called synths that the Institute creates, and they're basically Terminator kind of robots, but they've gotten to the point where they can impersonate people to the point of like almost like perfectly
I
impersonating
did encounter
people.
that situation. It was interesting. Yeah.
And so like there's kind of like this paranoia and fear in these settlements that like they could, or like their family could be like kidnapped in the night and replaced by a robot.
Yeah.
Because like and it's like initially I was like, all right, these people are just paranoid, they're crazy, they live in the wasteland. But then every once in a while I'd be like, no, this is fucking real. Like some like little kid will like open fire on a marketplace and they kill him and it's like a robot. Like this is not like
That happened?
It's not like this is like completely fucking out of
Did
control.
that actually happen in your game?
Pretty much.
Huh.
For lack of a better term, every once in a while, like there'll be somebody who like goes fucking off the charts, and like security will put them down. And if you like,
So,
search
I mean,
them,
yeah,
they could be a robot. And sometimes it's like, did they just kill an innocent person, or is it actually a robot? And that's kind of like a continuing kind of theme of it. And not to, I don't know how much I really want to give away, but there's also a lot more going on with like kind of like there's almost like, I don't know how much I want to give away or whatever. Spoilers.
But is it more like, well, maybe could you just say it's more of a literary kind of experience than a gamey experience?
Yeah, I mean, but it kind of like it introduces that like level of paranoia, and like the Institute is like a real force that exists in the wasteland that is doing some fucked up shit, and like these synths do exist. It's not like it's like a boogeyman that people made up. Like when I initially kind of was the first person that I meet, who's also somebody you can be a companion with. She's a reporter. She kind of like she's going off on like synths kidnapping people in the night, and people are being replaced by robots, and they're dangerous and all this shit. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, you're crazy. Like you're
you're just a
paranoid,
news
You're a
person.
nut job.
You're doing the Fox
You're
News.
you're trying to stir
Yeah.
up fear. Yeah, Fox News of the wasteland. Right?
Yeah.
But you're just trying to stir up fear, and you're trying to get like some like crazy story, and then it's like, no, like just these backstories of like these people who actually like freaking have been kidnapped and like killed by like these things. And
But-
when they cut them open, they're like, oh yeah, that is actually a robot. Like it's not like this is completely unfounded. This is something that actually happens in the Fallout universe.
And they're not all bad though. It's not like so. Your examples sound like the murdery, like destructive
Like,
part,
that
but
kind of thing.
it's
then it leads
it's
to this-
ambiguous.
but it also leads to this whole kind of thing where there's a faction in the game that you can engage with if you kind of go down. So if you do certain missions, you can kind of find them. They're kind of like a hidden little group that I just started doing stuff with. I'm just going to talk because whatever design style. They're called the Railroad, and their kind of main thing is like they're basically an underground railroad for runaway synths. Runaway synths that like identify as basically people with rights. Like they're like, we don't want to kill anybody. We're not.
Which is
out
the
to
thing
murder.
that's we're gonna have to deal with.
We just want to live in peace, but people want to freaking kill us if they know we're robots. And so like this group is all about like kind of getting them out of Dodge So the institute, because also it's not just like the people who are paranoid about them. It's also like the institute that created them is like hunting them down because they don't want them in the wild, like loose.
Man, it sucks to be a synth.
Yeah, it does suck to be a synth, right? So it's kind of like, but then it's kind of like that leads to that morally ambiguous kind of question of like, do you identify those synths as a life that's worth protecting? Like, are you going to put your life?
I think about this a lot
on the line. Yeah, that's a big part of the game. Where
I
I'm
actually
at
have an
right
answer
now
for that.
is like, would you risk your life to save a robot that thinks it's human, or like, or
I don't have an answer for that.
or is it human? Like, is it
Right.
a life worth protecting? Is it really a life, or is it just like a toaster? You know, it's like it's like what's your choice there? And there's people in the game that have very strong opinions about this one way or the other, and you kind of like.
What's your opinion?
I mean, right now in the game, I'm working with the railroad.
Yeah.
To kind of, I did a couple dead drops where you pick up like orders in like a mailbox and you go find some dudes and you try to like smuggle a synth out of the Commonwealth, and it led to some cool missions. Honestly, there was actually one of the first missions that you do with this group was a very much like an infiltration into like a secret base type mission, which I totally dig, and it totally fits to some of my characters' like skill set. Like, so it was actually like I didn't have a synth with me or anything on this point, but it was like one of their previous bases had been overrun and you had to kind of go reclaim it. And it turns into this thing where, well, at least the way I played it was like I was basically like creeping through this like secret base, and it turns out that the secret base was like a secret base from like pre-war times where you can learn a lot of shit about like the lead up to like the war through this kind of like stuff that's around this in the secret base. And also, it's a kind of very stealthy mission. Like, at least the way I played it, had great music. That wasn't the radio. Like the actual score of the mission.
Oh, like actual like game.
The actual game score
yeah.
was actually good for the mission. It was kind of almost reminded me like a little bit GoldenEye. You kind of had like little pingy triangle and the thing like. Kind of like sneaking through, just like I'm just blasting synths with my freaking silence pistol from the cuts.
Yeah.
Hacking terminals to like open doors and get through this crazy kind of like pre-war technological secret facility.
Yeah.
And it was definitely cool.
It felt very
It felt very good. I felt like the whole mission was like I was glad it was like one of those experiences like that was a really cool mission. Like I'm glad I did it kind of thing. On top of like kind of the stuff that like it leads into with like kind of this underground movement that's kind of their whole gimmick is that like, they believe synth life is on par with human life and like worth protecting.
What do you think about that in real life though?
I mean, we can go down the whole Chinese room argument and like all that.
What is that one again? I looked this up and I can never remember. It's like the one I forget.
The Chinese room is basically, it's an old argument, and it's kind of more of a philosophy argument than it is like anything that really has like a concrete kind of basis. But it's kind of like
a thought experiment.
It's kind of like if you passed a message through like a hole in a wall into a room that you couldn't see, and messages came back through that wall, and you can hold a conversation with something or someone that's on the other side of that wall, but you don't know, you can't see anything, there's nothing you can do to sense or understand what's behind the wall other than the messages that you receive back.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you send, hi, how are you doing? And it comes back like, fine, like, how are you, or whatever. Kind of like, because kind of general call and response prompts or whatever. Like, you can program a computer to hold that kind of conversation, right?
Sounds like a conversational glory hole.
they should reframe the whole philosophical argument.
It's,
Forget the Chinese room.
Yeah,
call it the conversation glory hole. So the conversation glory hole is convincing to the point where when the messages come back, you can't tell if you're talking to a computer or a person.
Right.
If there is a computer behind the wall, does it understand the conversation that's happening? And the Chinese room argument is basically saying, like, say this information is happening in Chinese, right? Does the computer understand Chinese? If it's not a computer, if it's a person on the other side of that wall who's taking those slips of paper, and they're in Chinese, the person doesn't speak Chinese. They're in Chinese. They see the slip of paper, they can take that slip of paper and they can look up in a giant index, all right, you get this slip of paper, you send this slip of paper back.
Right.
And they do that successfully enough to convince the person on the other side of the room wall that they're having like an actual conversation.
They just ignore the fact that it takes 20 minutes for a reply.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that person who's just taking one slip of paper and looking up to send back another slip of paper, does that person understand Chinese?
Well, I guess, so the real question here for me is, what is understanding?
Right. That's the point of the argument. Is
Yeah.
like if the person on the other side of the wall can respond in such a way that the person on the other side of the conversation is like, this is a conversation that's happening.
Right.
Does the way that the information comes out of the room determine of what's in the room? Does it understand what it's doing or not? You know, because it's successful. It's successfully communicating a thing, but is it actually communicating? Is it actually understanding what it's doing? And that's kind of like, that's the threshold where people kind of like,
That's where
is that, you know, because you can make a supercomputer like Watson, like hold that conversation. Does it mean it understands what the conversation is about, or is it just successfully tricking you with a really big fast lookup table?
Yeah, it is.
And if it is, then it's just a big toaster.
I mean, yeah, I think.
But at what point does that change? Because at what point does that change? What if it's a person on the other side of the wall of the lookup table? Does that person, do they have any understanding of what they're doing? You know, I mean, that's kind of the argument. Like, well, if it's the person, well, they're just looking stuff up. That doesn't really mean it.
They're almost just putting the information through another hole in the wall, really.
Right. So then the argument then becomes, how do I know that you're not a toaster that's just looking stuff up when I talk to you?
I do like toast.
Well, like when we're having this conversation here, it ostensibly is, you know, passing notes through a hole in the wall, just like one consciousness to another, supposedly, assuming you're actually here and I'm not insane.
This conversations get real out of control.
You know, is like, you know, at what point can you say that the thing on the other side of the conversation is actually understanding what they're saying to you, or you're actually responding, like with having a real conversation? What is a real conversation, and at what point does that person cross does that room or that person cross the threshold into being real enough that they're worthy of not just burning the room down because it's a toaster in there? You know, like they're worthy of saving if they're not real.
Yeah.
Is that a life?
Yeah. What do you? And I mean, I don't think you still haven't answered that, have you?
I mean, I kind of answered it with the Socratic method, really. I kind of answered it with a question. I mean, this is kind of like because I don't really have a solid answer, because I mean, it's like one of those things where I guess there is a threshold you kind of have to acknowledge that, like, at past a certain point,
Things are unknowable.
Things are kind of in a gray area, and once you kind of have, say you have a replicant android sitting in this room right now, and it's conversing with emotion, supposedly. And
simulated.
So, well, that's the thing. At what point is it not simulated? At what point is it actually just like felt? Am I just simulating my emotions? Am I just like am I a caller and response box that just is my lookup tables based on evolution, so it's quicker and fancier than a robot's? I mean, like, at what point are human beings' interactions rote? You know,
I actually have a stance on that, but I think we're just getting very far down this road.
We're way off topic now. But,
I guess to bring it back, I'm glad.
What was your response to the topic then?
What's mine?
Mm-hmm.
Mine is, and I decided this a while ago, that no, these are not alive beings. However, I think their actions, like what they produce, is so close to that you should still treat it with that respect, because like there's a sacredness to life, right? So I think if you get a complete clone of a person, indistinguishable, and then you find out it's a robot and you just shoot it in the stomach, like, what does that say about you, right? Like, what kind of person are you? It's somebody that wants to do that to real people, but they just can't. So they do it to a robot, right? Like,
but like, I guess what, you know, the question kind of comes in, like you said, like you decided that, well, that's not a life,
right?
So at one point, like, you know, would you consider shooting a toaster taking a life? You know, you just shot a toaster. Would you shoot?
No, I wouldn't.
Like, what about like shooting like paper targets, like at a shooting range? Like, I mean, the paper target, like, that's not a life.
No, yeah, and
so if you agree that like the robot isn't a life, then somebody could successfully argue that shooting them in the gut, although it might seem messed up because the robot might simulate like being in pain or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's no different than shooting paper targets or a toaster.
I would agree with that. It's just that I think that because they're able to produce what we are so convincingly, that we should respect it as if it were real. Because why not?
So you're basically saying that like you don't think it's actually a life, but from your own personal standpoint, you wouldn't like attack it because
because it's just like I don't know. I just think that it's you should just have a certain level of respect for your mortality, and to me that means looking at an exact replica of it and still like respecting my own mortality so much that I'm not going to mess with that. Like I'm not going to fuck with a simulation of it because it's not really any different from fucking with a real person, really, for all you know, right? So you're kind of
But I mean, I guess it's still kind of being kind of circuitous in the sense that it's like the words that are being used is like still kind of like a real person. Like at what point are they a real person or are they not a real person? And if they're not a real person, then it isn't the same if you shoot them in the stomach than shooting a real person.
right.
It's not the same.
It's not, and I don't think it would even feel the same. I just think that it's sort of like it's not how close to the line of murder can I get, it's how far away can I get, right?
Right.
So with that logic, that's kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't go around shooting toasters either. But it's more just saying, like, if somebody did, should they go to jail? It's kind of like that's.
Now
kinda,
that's a different question.
That's kind of that is the real question, really. Is like, is it okay or not? Like, maybe you don't agree with it. Maybe I say, baseball cards are precious. I would never set them on fire. But if somebody had their own baseball cards and they burned them, like, am I saying they're a monster?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if I say, like, my robot is precious, I would never shoot it in the gut. But somebody else has a robot and they set it on fire, and the thing's running around screaming, and they're like, no, it's okay, it's a robot.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Right.
Should you tackle that person and arrest them, or should you be like, well, it's theirs? That's kind of like, this is the wrong phrasing to put it up, but that's kind of like the way certain people treated like slaves and whatnot. Like, this is property.
Well, everything.
They're not really a person, so I can hang them and stab them and burn them if I want to because they're mine. And other people would be like, no, like, they're freaking people. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And it obviously, it's pretty obvious from where we sit now that one side of the equation was completely batshit.
Right. Yeah.
But so that's kind of the thing that's coming. Like, is it, if it ever reaches that point, is that okay for other people to do it? Like, still, like, you make your own choices. Like, you would never own slaves or do like these kind of things. But if other people are doing it, like, do we need to stop them?
Yeah, that is, and I guess that to me is, I guess, the question you should answer if you're really getting at this essence of life idea. I think that's the real question, not so much would you do it, but do you think other people should be held accountable for doing that thing? Because then that becomes more objectively true, closer to it at least. But I'm glad that Fallout has stuff in it that spurs this conversation.
Yeah, like I said, like, I had no idea. I'm like wandering around, like, collecting freaking pipe guns and breaking them down for screws, and I'm just like, there's got to be more to this. and I was kind of happy to find that, there is more to this.
You mean life, right?
What's that?
You mean life in general?
Oh yeah, just in general. I just kind of break things down into their component pieces and throw them in a sack on my back, bring them home. Every time
No, I thought I was saying you meant like you were looking through this stuff and you're just like, look, what am I doing with my life?
Well, kind of like, what am I doing with my Fallout life?
Yeah.
At what point I did have that kind of
That's actually exactly what happened.
Pretty much exactly. About 2 or 3 hours in, I'm like, what am I doing with my Fallout fucking character
I just
life?
show up every day, collect the same garbage.
Same shit, man. I load up till I'm over encumbered. I chug whiskey. Go back to my shop
so I can deal with my shitty job. Yeah.
Craft more guns, but for what? But for what? Why am I doing this?
That's it. I'm going to Diamond City.
I'm going to Diamond City.
I'm going to make it.
And that's exactly what happened. I went to Diamond City and I got involved in some shit that I didn't even know was going on.
It's like the classic, like, country bumpkin goes to the city and gets caught up in big city life.
Country bumpkin from 200 years ago gets caught up in
the sins of the city.
Newfangled future.
Right.
But I did kind of enjoy that, like, there was more kind of going on underneath the surface than, like, I initially kind of thought. I didn't even know there was, like, synths in the game. Actually, I found out before I did a mission with the Brotherhood of Steel when I meet them.
Yeah, and you blast a bunch of synths in that.
You blast a bunch of
yeah.
synths, and that's the first time I saw them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, like there's like Terminator robots. But then like other people were talking about like they look like people or whatever. So that happened before. They said like they can replace you in the night with like a synth or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, they can't. I just blasted a bunch of them. They look nothing like
Yeah,
people.
right, yeah.
But then I was like, no, actually, there's like more advanced ones that can.
Yeah, actually,
And so it's like
I forget where I was, somewhere near maybe southwest of that, and it was an interesting moment where I came across 3 people sort of arguing, just not really near anything in particular, which was strange. So I could hear them. I could hear like the sound's really good in that game, by the way. The way distance sort of distorts sound and all of that stuff is pretty good. But yeah, it was. So I walked into this situation where this husband and wife somehow discovered that the guy that was traveling with them was a synth, and I think they were like getting ready to kill him. And then I showed up, and I was like, "No, don't. He's cool. Like, look."
but you didn't know what was going on with that. You're just like, don't shoot that guy.
Yeah, I really didn't. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, so that's how I was introduced to this synth. I guess subplot or subtext.
But it was like a toe dip in the wall. You had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea.
You just
No,
thought,
I didn't
like, you
know
just
all
thought these
that was
crazy
going
people
on.
Were
Yeah,
just like arguing about.
yeah. I just kind of thought they
You
were.
didn't know it was
yeah.
like straight up Blade Runner shit.
I didn't realize it was like a societal debate
like an
going on
actual
in the world.
fear of
Right.
this stuff.
Or it was one that like it was a legacy sort of fear where people had for the most part moved on, and maybe there was still because there's still racists around, like going back to your slave metaphor, right? So maybe it was just something like just the stray racist out in the out in the middle of nowhere.
Out in the cuts.
Yeah.
There's definitely interesting people you can kind of find throughout. Like they definitely pocked the place. I mean, it's I honestly haven't read a ton about it since it came out. Like I haven't had a ton of time to like play the game, let alone like read articles about the game.
Yeah.
Although I did see a couple quick ones, just kind of like in passing, of like people were writing stories about how they were playing it like in different and interesting ways, or like they're trying to do something different. Some dude wrote an article about how he never left the main. He's like,
I saw that.
he stayed in Sanctuary, and there's another person who I didn't read it either because the only reason I know about it is because somebody did like a compilation of like these people wrote these articles about this is the way they played the game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one where a person played as like, I'm going to play this game as like a junkie. I'm going to take every drug, every drug that gets offered to me, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, and that's
like
that's the stuff that's why these games are so legendary, is because you can do a lot of stuff if you have good imagination, like really cool stuff. I mean, and that's the best I can put it outside of the examples you already gave.
Well, I mean, and also kind of like to make this really meta and very circuitous and crazy rambling talks that we like to have over here.
Almost exclusively.
The whole kind of meta conversation of like, are these robots real?
Yeah.
Well, every NPC in Fallout is a robot.
You're kind
like,
of like
it's kind of like a meta commentary on its own game. Like you
Yeah.
kind of come up with like these kind of, I've got a companion in the game who I'm sleeping with and like romantic engagement with, like, and she's very opinionated about stuff, and like I think she's very funny sometimes, and like there's good personality written into her, and like I never was like, is she a robot or whatever? Like never crossed my mind, but like you take a step back for 1 second, be like, oh wait, I'm playing a video game. Like this is all just like written shit.
Yeah.
Like her all of her emotional responses and like little personality banter that she jumps in with is all pre-programmed stuff. Now, does that mean like if she died in the game, I wouldn't be affected by it at all? Like I've seen firsthand people play Mass Effect and lose characters and like cry because they have like these emotional attachments to these characters. I know some people. It wasn't me.
Oh, I didn't think it was you.
You're like, who did it? No, it wasn't me. No, when Lisa played Mass Effect 2, she, like, one of her main characters died on the suicide mission at the end of Mass Effect 2.
Well, that's her fault.
And she cried about it.
She should. That was her fault. It was shitty of her. She didn't prepare her ship.
Well, actually, it was kind of messed up because actually I know exactly how it all went down. Not to go on a massive tangent, but basically, like the way that game rolls is that you have all your people on your ship, and you can get their loyalty by like doing their missions and doing shit that they like throughout the game.
Yep.
You can get their loyalty. and she had like a main crew that she rolled with. It was her, and it was Miranda and Tali. Like that was
I think everybody settles on that. Like,
that was like her power three.
Yeah.
Like, well, I didn't. That was totally different for me. I didn't use that.
Her, Miranda, and Tali. So she had the Charlie's Angels. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
pretty much, right? Yeah, that was her power three. She rolled that three.
That's cool.
Most of the game. And she obviously there's spots where you have to mix and match other folks, but that was pretty much her prime three, right? So like one point, like right towards the end of the game, there's like every once in a while like arguments break out in the Normandy between characters that don't get along. And there's an argument that happens between Jack and Miranda, and the game just gives you a very binary choice. Like you can back up Jack or you can back up Miranda in this argument.
Yeah,
And
actually,
you don't. There's no like talking them down. There's no like whatever. It's just like you have to pick one or the other.
and neither choice is satisfying. I'll just leave it at that.
And basically, and even though Miranda's like, she liked Miranda as a character better than Jack.
Right.
She didn't really use Jack that much, but she thought in this argument Miranda was wrong. She was being shitty, so she picked Jack. Just like
That's actually exactly what happened.
just like a logical choice. Like,
That was my objection
I
to
picked
it.
Jack in this argument. So then Miranda got pissy at her.
Yeah.
And that lost her loyalty.
Yeah.
That like lost her loyalty. Now with
Same,
other
that's
characters,
exactly what happened to me, and I'm so bummed.
with other characters and with time, you can win her loyalty back by like talking.
But
to
that's
her more.
one of the that's right at the end.
You can talk to her more, and like if you have the Paragon to pull it off or the whatever to pull it off, you can talk to her more, and like you can get it back. You can always bring everybody back to loyal eventually, even if you lose it for temporarily. You can always bring it back at some point.
Yeah.
Well, very shortly there, like she went back and to talk to her a bunch of times, and like Miranda wasn't talking to her. It was like more time needed to pass before like she was like those dialogue options would open up. And at one point she's like, okay, and then like she started the final mission. She went on the final mission. Suicide mission's going very well. She hasn't lost anybody. Blah de blah. At the very end, you have to fight the boss, and it's just like an on-foot fight. So she brings in her power three. She brings in Miranda and Tali with her. She fights the boss, and if you know how the game ends, spoiler alert to a 10-year-old game, you deal with it.
God, is it that old?
And no, it's not. It's probably like 5 years old, 4 years old.
Yeah, I think that's
It's probably 3 or 4 years old. When you fight the final boss, after the final boss goes down, there's like an escape sequence. But the final boss like takes down the room that you're in, and any character who's with you who isn't loyal to you dies.
Man, I can't even remember this. I beat that game like 3 times.
Any character who's with you that is in your squad of 3
Yeah.
that isn't loyal to
I
you
didn't
at
know you
that
could
point,
lose anybody there.
they die.
Huh.
And if they are loyalty, they just like get back up.
Yeah.
Like, and then you like dust themselves off and you all go. But if they don't, then they die.
Yeah.
And so this had happened, and Tali gets back up, and Miranda kind of like moves a little and like slumps back down, and she's dead.
Yeah.
And like there's nothing you can do, and
Yeah.
she's had to and she's like no, and she's like trying to get her, and then Tali like grabs her and drags her out, and then you have to like run. So it's like an escape sequence where you have to like run to the exit and like very dramatically slow motion jump into space onto the Normandy as it's like
I remember
taken away.
that. Yeah.
And
That was,
and then it's like, look, there's that happens, and then it's like, no, like, and then she's like crying because like Miranda's freaking dead, and like the
and there's
ending is,
clearly
like-
no coming back.
And then there's like the ending cutscenes kind of start going and telling the story out, and there's like this whole kind of emotional thing where like her shepherd's like standing over like a single body bag like in the bay, and it's like
Yeah.
Miranda's thing
Yeah.
or whatever.
And the first time.
and she was like crying and shit, and she's like, oh, what the fuck, like, it's just like and I just thought that was fucking amazing. Like I just thought like this is fucking great. Like the actual like the storytelling, the character building, the world building is to the point where like an emotional attachment was made to the point where like she's very upset that this character died, and that became the story. She played it. She didn't like replay it. She imported that character into Mass Effect 3 with Miranda being dead. Like
That's
she,
awesome. That's
and
the way
she-
to do it.
And
That's
she
the way
kept
to play
playing.
it. Yeah.
But I was like, this is amazing. Like this is like. It was one of the first times I know other people who like got upset when like Aerith died in Final Fantasy VII, or like people have cried at like game characters, but also like movies and like books like have been doing that forever. But that was like one of the first times I saw. I was like, oh shit, like somebody successfully did it in a game where like people like were invested in this character.
Yeah.
Where like I don't know, I've never had that happen to me like in many of these kind of things where it's like I was that kind of
I've never cried in my whole
broken up
life,
about it.
actually.
in your whole life.
I don't think men have those parts. It's like, yeah, right. Like
This is a physiological disadvantage. No tear ducts.
no tear ducts. Men don't have them.
But no, I mean that was kind of a crazy thing. But it's still like, but yeah, also you just know like, those are the things that happened under the hood. Like Miranda died because the system is built in such a way that when that fight ends, if you don't have the loyalty of any character, they die. Or whatever.
Yeah.
But it still led to this experience that
Right.
happened. Like, it's a very binary, rote, pre-programmed thing that happened.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the computation was the emotional experience that happened in an actual person that interacted with this art. It's actually, that art form kind of reached out and touched somebody in a certain way, the same way that novels and, movies and music have been doing forever. And for like a blockbuster title to pull something like that off is pretty crazy. I mean, I don't even know how many characters I've seen die in Call of Duty, and I couldn't give a shit.
Just like, good, you fucker. I hated you.
Well, I mean, when I think it was Roach. When Roach got blasted in the one Call of Duty, I was pissed. I wasn't like, oh,
I've never
cry
played
about
Call
it,
of
but
Duty.
I was like, God damn it, really? Like, it was a cool character. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of like, but it just made you more pissed at like the main enemy kind of thing. But anyway, so yeah, bringing it all the way back after the detour into Mass Effect, it was kind of like, yeah, so it's like, are the robots and the synths like worthy of life? And then within that, the things that are debating are they worthy of life are all pre-programmed robots.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by a bunch of AI in every direction. It's a single-player game. I'm there by myself, but I got my companion at my side, and she's quipping funny one-liners. So is she better than the synths? I don't know.
Yes.
Well, of course. Although she gives me shit now when I drink my whiskey because she's clean now.
That's awesome. Yeah, you were telling me that's a cool little system, man. Do you what difficulty are you playing on?
Normal.
Yeah.
I've considered bumping it up, but I just haven't really bothered.
It's you can't. That's a problem with those games is because it's so simulation driven. They lose the ability to design with a certain amount of tightness, I think. So you can't, like, I find in Fallout and games like Fallout, I get into situations where the experience isn't designed at all, so it can be very unfair because it's just a thing that's happening. So within that, to say you're playing on very hard is kind of, it can be really almost, it can be outright unfair sometimes because the situations are not
Well, like you said,
designed.
It's very simulated in the sense of like levels and power and health and AP and all this kind of stuff that's involved in like, are you a match for another enemy?
But
where I've definitely
moment.
I've gotten in fights with, like I was telling you about, like the irradiated Deathclaw that I got in a fight with that just jacked me in one hit, and eventually I was able to kill it by freaking becoming a junkie for a second, and just shooting up everything in my inventory, and then blowing its leg off with a magnum, which was very satisfying.
Sounds like a great time.
But yeah, it was like, I was not expecting it. I was just in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Deathclaw is there for like a mission later on that I wasn't supposed to be there. Like I wasn't on the mission. Like,
Yeah,
and I don't know. I could be
that
wrong.
happens.
It could just be there.
He could,
But
yeah.
it could be like something where like somebody later on is gonna be like, go kill this freaking Deathclaw. And actually, I've had this happen a couple of times, and I really appreciate that it does it. Is that, but like I told you kind of how I built up my character a few weeks ago. But like I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like a gunslinger hacker, but I've got some charisma where I can generally pass most speech charisma checks.
Yeah.
So I've been this has happened a couple of times where somebody, like, every once in a while you'll come across an NPC who's like, there's like an option to ask them if they have like a job that needs doing, and they'll send you on like a mission. They'll be like, go kill all the super mutants in the public library because I love that place and I want it cleared out. Or like there's one that they sent me on a mission to go get a beer brewing kit, like, and they're like, I'll pay you in caps and beer. And I was like, done. Like, I'm totally doing this mission. And you have to like fight your way through a pub to like get to this beer brewing thing, and it was sweet.
Yeah.
But like at any point when you do these things, it's like you get like a speech check, like charisma check, like, yeah, I think I need some more money. And then there's like a harder one, like after if you pass that one, it gives you an option for a harder one. Like, it still sounds too dangerous. Like, I think I need even more money. If you pass that one, there's like a very hard one.
This happened to you.
A bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like, a bunch of times it'll be like, and then it'll be like, they're a very hard one to like
That's
to pass.
interesting.
Where it'll be like, I'm thinking about it. Still don't.
And they're not rolls. They're just checks, right? So it's not like,
I don't know. I'm assuming that there's some rolling to it, but I've got like high enough charisma right now where like I just kind of pass them.
Yeah, that would be two different things, and I feel like if it were a role, that would actually be really cool. But then if it were,
But if I'm wearing
it's
gear that
kind
gets
of
me up to 10
tedious.
charisma, I pretty much pass them.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't even know if it's like a role. I'm sure it is a role in the past.
What gear gives you 10 charisma?
Well, I want you to put together, and I already have like a baseline of charisma to get
Do
me
you
up
look
to.
really cool?
Kind of cool. It's
Yeah.
all right. It's kind of like an Indiana Jonesy kind of like satchel bag and like a cowboy hat with like black rimmed glasses.
That's charismatic. That works.
And so I'm rocking those three things together with the charisma I have. I get up to 10 charisma, and then I can pretty much pass. I haven't failed a speech check wearing that gear. When I know I'm getting into conversation, I have them on favorites where I can just be like, throw on my fucking speech gear.
Dude, it's so funny. It's kind of like in real life, like when you just like you got a serious business meeting, you put your suit on, and you're just like, all right,
Suit up real quick.
Yeah.
Anytime I go to barter, I throw it on too. I get better prices, and I get better. The higher your charisma, you get better prices at shops.
Yeah.
And so and you sell stuff for more money. And so like I'm negotiating like, you know what, you said there's already raiders there, this sounds really dangerous. Nah, I'm not even gonna do it unless you come up with like a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they're like, fine, go do it. Here's 500 caps if you go do it. And it was something that I'd already done.
Oh, nice.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
and then like they're like, here, like I'll give you 500 caps if you do it. And the thing that I really appreciate that the game then gives me like the conversation option. Yeah, I already did that.
Yeah.
And it's like I already did that. And they're like, oh, well, deal's a deal. Here's your 500 caps. So basically, I bartered with somebody into doing some like that. The super mutants in the public library is specifically the one that I remember. This happened twice to me already, but that was one that I just found the public library. I went in to see what was up.
Yeah.
Killed everything in it. It was full of super mutants. I killed
It's
them. I
weird
killed
when-
them all. So then this woman asked me to clear it out, and I negotiated up to like 500 caps for the job, and I was like, yeah, I already did it. She's like, well, I call that service. And she's like, boom, take your money, fine. And she's like, oh, that's funny. She like laughed too. I was like, that's great. Like it acknowledged the fact that like I talked her up on something I had already done.
Yeah, that is actually incredible. I applaud that. That's good. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess. I mean, in that sense, like, I don't know. Are you? Was your point there like difficulty? Like speaking to difficulty?
I mean, what were we getting on there? We was talking about like player choice.
Man, I wish we didn't have to circle back because we could just talk forever and it would be so fun.
But I mean, like, yeah, we went off the rails a couple of times. But
Where are we at on time?
we're looking at like, we're over an hour.
No, we should
Actually,
probably,
really, it's an hour 24.
yeah, holy shit, we should probably wrap it up.
Probably wrap the sucker up.
But yeah, Fallout 4, good game, and maybe we'll have more to say about it.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend, like, before you quit playing, engage with the main quest. Because I had a similar experience where, from what I see, a lot of people who got into the game early were basically being like, oh, my son's missing? Like, who?
Yeah.
Like, fuck, I'm going exploring.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, my son, what?
Which you can do.
Which you can do. And so, but then, like, when I kind of got myself back on track, it actually sent me kind of off track in better ways. I'll put it that way, where it's like, now when I go sidetracking, it's on a side mission. And it has, like, people are involved with it.
You
like,
followed your curiosity rather than just
two
try to stumble on
actual
something.
like missions that send me to buildings for reasons instead
Yeah.
of just being like, oh, the super duper mart, I'm gonna go through and kill everything.
Right, that's so much. Yeah, it's way more satisfying when you start like combining. Like if you're just there for one
And it's
reason, it's
also
way
just-
better when you're there for three reasons.
And it's also like specifically more not just like emotionally rewarding, but actually like in-game system rewarding. Like when you actually do them both at the same time, you get experience for killing the enemies, you get all the gear that you find
Right.
there, and you get the
Yeah.
experience for turning in a quest. And obviously, they usually come with rewards and stuff as well. And the fastest way to level up is like you get like 500, 600 experience for turning in a quest, which you could take you got to kill like 30 freaking guys to do the same.
That's cool. I'm glad that's like that.
So it's like, and especially when you have like high intelligence or like the Lover's Embrace perk going or whatever, like you like then multiply those by like another whatever percentages that you get. So like,
You know, we didn't talk about that whole UI of the perks part. I think that's a thing we should spend time on. It's just how poorly designed it is for the PC.
Yeah.
And confusing, I guess. And it's not that it's so weird because it's not a horrible design. It just goes off the rails because of what we assume. You know, like if you didn't know anything about games, you could probably navigate it just fine. It's almost like you're worse off if you've played games.
yeah, it is kind of funny that like just by the single bit of having to do the extra like odd interaction with it, and by that, like the right click and drag, like interaction or whatever it is. That oddness of that interaction, like the non-intuitiveness of that interaction, leads people to miss that out. Whereas, like, I don't think a single console player has even thought twice about it, because like the second you have to move left or right with the stick, and it's very intuitive to just go up and down too, and you instantly just kind of go up and down.
Yeah.
Like, there's no. It's the same thing that you'd go left and right to pick the options. It goes up and down. So
which is what it should have been. It should have been just. I don't know. Anyways, we can maybe talk about that next time.
Yeah, as you engage in it a little bit more, and I also get to play with it a little bit more. Hopefully. Probably not going to get to play it tonight, but maybe sometime this weekend I'll play a little bit more of it. I'm definitely getting farther in. Some interesting stuff happening. I was kind of surprised at kind of the whole Blade Runner subtext kind of, are we going to do this kind of Blade Runner in the Wasteland type situation, which I did not expect like at all. But yeah, I mean, it led to some interesting conversations at least, and it's probably the intention of their stuff, as much as people might want to complain about kind of the standardization of questing systems where 99% of quests in any role-playing game are basically like, go here, kill these guys, collect this thing, come back.
That's good enough for me.
Gives me a reason to go to someplace new.
Yeah.
I hate a quest that's like, go to the place that you've already been 4 times and do something. No. How about you send me someplace new?
Always forward. Yeah.
That was my favorite thing about what they did with the Radiant AI system in Skyrim. Some people complain about that, about how, like, you know, if you kill the shopkeeper, you should just freaking lose that quest. You fucked up. You should lose any quest that they would give you. Well, that's not the part of the Radiant AI system that was even interesting to me. Like, I could give a shit that his daughter took over the shop, and now she gives me the quest instead. So that, I mean, I kind of like that from a design standpoint of, like, it doesn't bar you from losing quests, so people might actually keep the fact that they killed the shopkeeper, whereas everybody else, they're like, if he does, you should just lose the quest. Bullshit. Every one of you said that are save scummers. You're all gonna freaking reload the game when you realize you missed a quest.
Yeah.
You lying bastards.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they let you kind of keep that guy actually being dead, they allow you to keep that as a thing and not lose the quest. So you might keep that as part of your story, that this shopkeeper died.
Yeah.
Which might be a lead to something interesting, as opposed to you just reloading your save game, you liars.
Right. Yeah.
It allowed, but the thing that was really interesting about it that I really liked was when you got those side quests, they weren't all to the same place. If you went to like the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper was going to give you a quest to like go, and the quest was something simple like, go to this cave, kill these guys, get this.
It wasn't the cave that the main quest was already sending you to.
Right, or if it was or if there was a cave that you had already found and you had already looted it, and like whatever, then when you found that shopkeeper, he'd be like, go to this cave, kill this guy, bring this thing back, but it would send you to a different cave. Like the game had basically a preset like list of locations that existed as possible quest locations, so that it would always send you someplace new. So it wouldn't send you back to the same
I have a counterpoint
cave
to this
that you've already freaking been to.
But-
Because that happened in Oblivion and some other things. When you'd go kill everybody in a spot, and then you get a quest from some guy. It's like, go back here, and then you go back there. There's just a bunch of dead bodies. In your or now like a new guy just spawned because the quest's on now, and like a new boss spawns in the same area, and it's like, well, that's silly, especially for like a side quest.
Right, a guy spawns and he's walking around as if all the other people were there, right?
And they're not all freaking.
And they're all just on the ground, fucking tanked out and bleeding.
For all I know, I mean, Fallout could be doing the same stuff, although these ones seem a lot more tightly designed in the sense that, like, this guy sends you here, this guy sends you here, and they kind of wired it all up, like, in line, as opposed to, like, a lot of these kind of more just, like, send you to a random place A to get item X. So, yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that puts us at just about the hour and a half mark, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's like 3:45, so we should probably wrap it up,
shit.
because I need to do a few things before the day is over. All right, that should put a wrap on this. I'll be interested to hear kind of what comes out of this rambling venture through Mass Effect, Fallout, Super Mario, back into retro arcade, back into what makes a person, and am I talking to a robot or not? I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out next time. We'll see you later.